Last week we looked at the story of doubting Thomas, and it made sense. You know, you want to touch Jesus, you want to know whether or not he's truly alive or just kind of there as a vision. And that kind of informed the story we're looking at this week, which is kind of like a parallel to that story only found in Luke. Now, remember, Luke is the social justice gospel. He is eminently practical. So we don't have a story that talks about a great lot of theology and beliefs and whatever else. We have a really kind of nuts and bolts, I'm here, touch me, feed me. I'm not a ghost, see? That's the essence of the scripture we're looking at today. I'm not a ghost. My kids are ridiculously sarcastic, beautifully sarcastic. And for years now, on Easter Sunday, they would look at me and say, is Jesus a zombie yet? This year I was seeing a couple of posts referencing Jesus as a zombie on social media, and it was a new concept for people. They were kind of shocked and surprised and didn't know quite how to do it. My kids, it's all humor, it's all sarcasm with so many other things. But this whole idea of a risen body, like a risen Christ, even those of us who have been faithful our entire lives really struggle to grasp what that means, what that could have been like. You see this guy bleeding, banged up, on a cross, dead. No one could have survived that. In fact, they made sure he was dead, brought him down. 3 days later, he's sitting among you asking for a piece of fish. It is fantastical. And he basically comes out with, and I told you so, which is as close as Jesus is going to get to I told you so. But here it is. He says, I told you this was going to happen. I told you I'm going to have to suffer. We're going to go through it, and then I'll rise again. I told you in the metaphor of buildings. I told you in the metaphor of any number of things, and you didn't understand me. Of course they didn't. They only heard about their friend dying. They only realized that it was over, it was done, and that they could be next. That was where the disciples' minds were. So on Easter Sunday, and the Sundays that follow, when Jesus kept popping up with his friends, by the way, there was no new teachings, there was no new encounters. All the people he encountered were those who had already been followers, and close followers at that. He kept popping up and showing them, this is what I was talking about. There's more to this story. We're not done yet. And he laid that groundwork for them, that death was not the end. It didn't have to be the finish line of anything they were doing, that there was more to this. By the time the disciples, we read about them in the book of Acts, they've got that sensibility. All of the confusion and the questions and the lack of understanding that we see in the synoptic gospels, and even a little bit in the Gospel of John, that was all cured up. And by the time we get to the book of Acts, it was also written by the writer of Luke, the disciples have mission. They have focus. They know what they're going to do. It's experiences like the one we're reading today that help them get to that point. Here's Jesus sitting among them saying, it's as I told you, nothing of this should surprise you. This is what it's meant to be. You touch me, you feed me, we spend time talking, but now it's time to go and do the work. The thing with Jesus having to leave, and this leads up to the story of ascension and Jesus leaving for the last time. The thing with Jesus having to leave is that he would have continued to be the sole focus of this message that he came to bring us. That it was a message of, go out there, fix the world, which is very much Luke's message as well. But go out there, make it better. You as partners in this whole creation business, you can help me with this. It's not just me that's going to do this. But if Jesus had remained, then there would have been that natural inclination to just let him continue to take all the hits, make all the inquiries, start all the conversations. And that is not the way we are supposed to behave as Christians. When Jesus rose, it wasn't a ghost. Something that we can't explain. Our theology is limited. Our physics is just useless. But something happened that showed us that there's so much more to life than what we think there is. The disciples now had to be galvanized to move on, and we have to follow that as well. I was asked not that long ago in a conversation about, how do you know there's a heaven? How do you know there's anything beyond this life? Like, prove to me really that there is something there. Well, of course, I can't do that. All I can do is share my own experiences and stories. So I told them about my aunt dying, my great aunt dying, and how as she was dying, she looked to me and her face just lit up and her eyes got shiny and she had a little bit of a smirk and smile on her face. And she breathed her last breaths within minutes of that experience. She was looking through me at something. That is how I know there's something more. On this earth, how I know there's something more is because the work is not done yet. Jesus told his disciples, you see me, but there are going to be a lot of people who won't have a chance to see me. You have to make me alive for them. Don't get caught down or bogged down in trying to explain away any of what's happening to me. Take the core message and go out and do something with it. Do not wait. I'm not going to be around anymore. It is your job to take on this responsibility and continue it on. Continue to grow this movement that we're part of. And remember, this is first century Palestine. This is not 3rd century or 4th century Rome, where we have the structure of the church building and the organization, all that kind of stuff. We're still back at the proto-Christians being a movement of social change, of challenging the authorities, both in the temple and in the courts, the political courts of Rome. Risk. Even if bad things happen to you, and some of them, they will happen, and certainly 2,000 years ago, they did happen to some of Jesus' closest followers. Even if that does happen, it does not the end. It does not stop the message that we have to continue sharing. Jesus appeared in front of those people who knew him best because he had already spent a lot of time teaching them. And here we have in this passage saying that he opened their minds, that they finally got it. They had their aha moment, their epiphany, their, okay, now we get what we're supposed to be about, because they haven't all the way through. Jesus has the opportunity to open our minds too, to show us what is possible, what we're expected to be part of, what we're asked to do. We're not asked to do everything. We're just asked to be in partnership so everything gets done. It's a different focus. Our minds can be opened. The person that asked me about proving there's something beyond death, they'd already decided there wasn't. And they wanted me to break down those walls. I couldn't do that. But when you encounter someone who hasn't got that wall set up, who is truly seeking, who genuinely wants something to work with, we have that in this gospel. Open the minds of the people we meet. Look at ways that they can actually engage. Look at the really on-the-ground logic and reality and responsibility that all of us have. Aside from the Gospel of John, that gets really theological, the Synoptic Gospels, especially the Gospel of Luke, was very clear about telling people how to be faithful Christians. So we don't have to do that work. We don't have to explain how it is to be Christian. And eventually, people will get there. Opening minds does not mean that everything is completed, that there's no more growth to happen. The disciples had a whole lot more growth. All Jesus was doing with them was removing a lot of the social constructs that bound their assumptions. I mean, if you think about it, you're talking to a dead guy who's eating lunch with you, saying, now it's your time to go and do the stuff that I was doing. You know, you're going to have a reaction to that. Jesus wanted them to have that reaction, to go out and do the things that needed to be done. Christianity is not hard. Anybody can do it. And we see that in the world around us, where people who think that they are not Christian, which, I mean, can be because that's adherence to an institution, are doing the work of Jesus. They're feeding people. They are housing people. They are looking for ways to have prison reform. They're looking for ways to have social reform for homeless. This is the kind of stuff Jesus was asking his disciples to go out and do. Essentially, 2,000 years later, it is working. The message is getting out there. It is not based on adherence to a particular faith tradition. That's not exactly where we're focused on, and that might not be healthy for a whole lot of reasons. But the act of going out there and transforming the world is as vital today as it ever has been. And we can see it happening in real time. We just have to look. This is Jesus removing the kind of boundaries from our own eyes, so we now get it. Jesus was not a ghost, was not a zombie, was not a vision, was not something of their imagination. Jesus was a real person, risen to tell us it's now our turn. We can take that knowledge, that enlightenment, that opening of our mind, that commission, as we go forward. That is what we're called to do, and just as the disciples were so many years ago. We should not be stopped from making the difference in the world, because that is all God has asked us to do. Through love, change the world, and we can do that.